A little girl calls wrong. Emergency, please help. Then a billionaire showed up. Please help. My mom's not waking up. There's snow and blood. That trembling voice came from a little girl who dialed the wrong number. On the other end wasn't her uncle. It was the billionaire who owned the company that had broken her mother. While the city of Boston slept under a storm, a child's cry pierced through the silence, and a man who had everything suddenly remembered what humanity felt like. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Stay till the very end and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now, let me tell you how a wrong number changed 2 lives forever. It was almost midnight when Emma Evans finally left the office. 16 hours straight. No bonus. No thank you. Her fingers ached from typing. Her eyes burned. But she still stayed late to fix the project everyone else gave up on. As she shut down her computer, the screen flashed. Project completed, submitted by Michael Turner. Her name wasn't there. She froze. 3 months of work gone in one click. Her pulse raced as she stared at the glowing monitor, her reflection trembling in the glass. He did it again. She whispered, the words dry and bitter. He took everything, and I still said thank you. Outside, the cold Boston wind cut through her coat. It was midnight, and the buses had stopped running an hour ago. She couldn't afford a taxi, not on what she made. So she walked. The city lights blurred through her tears, and her breath came out in sharp clouds. Every step echoed against the empty sidewalks, a rhythm of exhaustion and quiet rage. She thought about the meeting earlier that day, Turner smiling as he presented her slides, her ideas, her hours. Everyone applauded him. No one looked at her. She had stayed invisible so long. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Her hands trembled as she pulled her scarf tighter. Just get home, she told herself. Warm up the leftover soup. Kiss Lucy goodnight. Sleep a few hours. Then start over. Again. But halfway down the icy street, the world began to tilt. Her heartbeat stumbled. The buildings blurred. Her legs went weak. She tried to reach for the wall, but her body wouldn't listen. Her last thought wasn't about the stolen project, or Michael Turner, or even the company. It was about Lucy, her little girl, waiting by the window. Then everything went dark. From that same window, Lucy Evans saw her mother fall. At first, she thought Mummy had just slipped, but then she saw the stillness, the way her mother's arm didn't move. Barefoot, she ran outside, her tiny breath fogging in the air. Mum, wake up. Please, wake up. Her voice cracked. She shook her mother's shoulder, but Emma didn't respond. The snow beneath her hand was turning red. Lucy grabbed the phone from her mother's coat pocket, her small fingers trembling. She remembered what Mom always said, if something bad ever happens, call Uncle Jack. She tried, but her hands were shaking too much, her tears blurring the numbers. She missed one digit. A man's voice answered, deep and rough. Who is this? Lucy sobbed into the phone. Please help. My mum's on the ground. She's not waking up. There's snow, there's blood. I don't know what to do. There was a long pause. Then the voice softened. Where are you? Kid. Lucy looked around, trying to remember. The red door, next to River Hardware. The man's voice came again. Calm, but urgent. I'm coming. Miles away. Matt Donovan set down his glass of bourbon. The city stretched below his penthouse window, cold and perfect, just like the life he'd built. A few hours ago, his board had accused him of losing touch with his people, his purpose, his humanity. He hadn't argued. Then the phone rang. A child's voice, trembling, desperate, and without thinking, he grabbed his coat and keys. The snowstorm outside was fierce, the wind slapping against his windshield, but all he could hear was that voice, small and breaking, "Please help." When he finally saw the red door, he slammed the brakes. Snow sprayed under the headlights. A little girl stood outside, her thin sweater soaked through, her eyes wide and wet. "You came," she whispered. He crouched down, his breath visible in the freezing air. "I said I would." He lifted Emma into his arms, her body limp, her skin cold against his. Lucy followed close, clutching her bear. The SUV door shut behind them, sealing out the storm. For the first time in years, Matt Donovan, CEO, billionaire, man of numbers, felt something he didn't know he still had: responsibility. Matt Donovan tightened his grip on the steering wheel as the snow hit harder, the wipers barely keeping up. In the rearview mirror, he saw Lucy's small hands pressed against her mother's face. Emma's breathing was shallow, each exhale thinner than the last. The dashboard light cast a pale glow over them, turning the child's tear-streaked face into something both fragile and fierce. "Stay close to her," he said quietly. "The heater's on high. We'll be there soon." Lucy didn't answer. She just nodded, her chin trembling as she held Emma's hand. Inside the hospital lot, the SUV skidded slightly before stopping. Matt stepped out, lifted Emma into his arms, and walked toward the entrance without looking back. His shoes left a trail of slush on the marble floor as he pushed through the sliding doors. The night clerk straightened, ready to stop him. "Sir, paperwork first." Matt's voice stayed calm, even low. "I'll give you what you need. But first, I need your trauma team here now." The badge clipped to his coat reflected under the light Donovan Group Foundation. The clerk hesitated, eyes widening. "Right away, sire." Within seconds, 2 nurses and a resident arrived. With a gurney, they moved Emma swiftly into an exam bay. Lucy tried to follow, but Matt crouched down and stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. "They're helping her now. She's in good hands." The little girl's lip quivered. "You promise?" His throat tightened. "I do." They waited outside, the hum of machines filling the silence. Lucy sat next to him, swinging her legs, her stuffed bear clutched tightly. After a while, she asked, barely above a whisper, "Are you a doctor?" "No," he said. "Then why did you come?" He looked at her for the first time and said, "Because no one else did." Her eyes met his, and something quiet passed between them. Trust, or maybe just hope that someone finally cared. An hour later, a nurse appeared. "She's stable now. Mild concussion. Hypothermia. She needs rest." Lucy's shoulders sagged with relief. "Can I see her?" The nurse smiled. "Just for a minute." Matt followed her into the small hospital room. The beeping of the monitor was steady. Emma's face was pale, but peaceful, the tension gone from her brow. When her eyes fluttered open, confusion crossed her features. Her gaze settled on Matt first. "Mr. Donovan." Her voice was weak, rasped from cold and exhaustion. He nodded once. "Your daughter called me. By accident." I think Emma tried to sit up, but winced. Of course. My luck. Even my emergencies end up in your hands. She laughed once, dry and small, then covered her face with trembling fingers. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I'm apologizing. You don't have to, he said softly, but she shook her head. No, I do. Because it's embarrassing. Because I'm the woman who spent 6 years keeping your company running. And you probably never even knew my name. Her words cut through him more cleanly than any accusation. He took a step closer. Emma. He started, but she interrupted. I worked until my hands went numb, until I forgot what my kid's voice sounded like some nights. And still, they called me replaceable. Matt stood there, silent, because every word was true. The fluorescent light hummed above them, filling the space where he couldn't speak. He wanted to tell her it wasn't his fault, that he couldn't possibly know every story in a company of thousands, but the truth sat heavy in his chest. He could have known. He just never looked. Emma turned her head away, tears sliding down her temple. I thought working hard meant being seen, but I was wrong. It just made me easier to use. Matt's voice came quiet, almost hesitant. You're not invisible. You just work in a place that stopped seeing people. She gave a small, bitter smile. That place has your name on the door. He couldn't argue. Instead, he looked at Lucy, sitting by the bed, eyes fixed on her mother's hand. For a moment, he saw what his company had taken from them, not just hours, but life. He reached into his coat pocket and set his card on the table. If you need anything, she cut him off again, her voice tired. Mr. Donovan, what I need is rest, and for my kid to know I'll still be here tomorrow. He nodded, accepting the quiet rebuke. As he turned to leave, Lucy whispered, "Thank you for coming." He stopped in the doorway. I said I would. Outside. The snow had thinned into a soft drizzle. For the first time in years, Matt Donovan didn't feel powerful. He felt responsible, and in that quiet hospital corridor, with the hum of machines behind him and the memory of Emma's voice still in his mind, something inside him began to change. The next morning came grey and quiet, the kind of Boston morning that smelled like wet asphalt and hospital coffee. Matt hadn't slept. He had replayed every word Emma said the night before until it echoed like a truth he couldn't escape. Replaceable. That word haunted him more than the storms or the silence. By the time the sun rose, he had already bought 2 coffees and a small bag of groceries. Unsure why he was coming back at all, only that he couldn't stay away. When he walked into the hospital, Lucy was sitting on the bench outside her mother's room. Hair messy, shoes untied, her stuffed bear sitting beside her like a guard. She looked up, eyes bright despite the fatigue. "You came back," she said softly. Matt smiled faintly. He made a promise. He handed her a muffin and the smaller coffee cup. She took it carefully, both hands holding the warmth as if it were precious. Inside the room, Emma was awake, propped up on the thin hospital pillow. Her face looked less pale, but her eyes were cautious. Matt set the groceries on the side table without saying much. "Thought you could use something real to eat." She hesitated, then said quietly, "You didn't have to do this." He met her Hase. Maybe I did. Silence settled between them. Not awkward, just full of things neither of them knew how to say. Matt studied her face and saw the exhaustion beneath the calm, the kind that came from years of being strong with no one noticing. Finally, he spoke, Emma, what really happened at work? She exhaled, slowly. Her voice low. You already know. It's in the files, somewhere. Numbers. Hours. Reports. He shook his head. I know what's written, not what it cost you. Her eyes softened for a moment, then hardened again. My boss, Michael Turner. I took credit for the project. I spent 3 months building. It was mine, every number, every word. But when the board reviewed it, his name was the only one on the screen. He got the promotion, the bonus. I got a warning for not being efficient enough. Matt didn't interrupt. He let her speak. He smiled during the meeting. She continued. The kind of smile people wear when they know you can't fight back. When I asked him why, he said I should be grateful to even have a job, that there were 10 people ready to take my place. Her hands tightened around the blanket, and he was right. Rent doesn't care about fairness. Matt's chest ached in a way that felt unfamiliar. He had heard versions of this story before, rumors, HR summaries, exit interviews, but never like this. Never from someone whose life had been built and broken by the numbers he approved. Why didn't you report it? He asked softly. Emma let out a dry laugh. To who HR? They report to him. And even if they didn't, I'm a single mom who depends on health insurance. I can't afford to make enemies. She paused, staring down at her hands. You learn to survive by staying quiet. You tell yourself it's temporary, that maybe next quarter, someone will finally see you, but they never do. Matt swallowed hard. He wanted to say something comforting, something human, but every word felt too small. All he could manage was, you deserved better. She looked up, eyes tired but sharp. Everyone says that after the damage is done, the air in the room thickened. Matt sat back in the chair, his gaze drifting toward the IV stand. The hospital monitor, the fluorescent hum that seemed to vibrate with the weight of their silence. He thought of the glossy quarterly reports, the polished slogans about innovation and opportunity. How blind those words felt now. Emma's voice softened. I don't hate the company. You know, I hate what it turns people into. He looked at her, guilt pressing down on his chest. You're right. I built something that rewards the wrong things. For a moment, she seemed surprised by his honesty. Then she nodded slightly. That's rare. Hearing a man like you admit that. He smiled faintly, but his voice was quiet. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending it's working. The nurse came in briefly to check Emma's vitals, then left again, the door closing gently behind her. The quiet returned, but it felt different now, softer, almost warm. Matt stood and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. You should rest. She gave a small nod. He turned toward the door, but her voice stopped him. Why did you really come? Mr. Donovan, is this about guilt? He paused, hand on the doorframe. Maybe at first. He admitted, but now, I'm not sure. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's realizing that somewhere along the way, I stopped being human too. Her eyes lingered on him, unreadable. But there was no anger in them anymore, just understanding. He stepped out quietly, leaving the door slightly open. Lucy was sitting on the bench, humming to her bear. When she saw him, she smiled, the kind that makes a tired man stand a little straighter. Is Mom okay now? She asked. He crouched down beside her. She will be. You helped her more than you know. Lucy looked thoughtful for a moment. Then she whispered, I told her you'd come back. Matt smiled, eyes soft. You were right. As he walked out of the hospital, the morning light broke through the grey clouds. For the first time in a long while, Matt Donovan didn't just see the city, he felt it. Every face he passed, every person rushing to survive, all part of the system he had built and now couldn't unsee. And as the wind caught his coat, he realized something simple but irreversible. This wasn't about fixing a mistake. It was about facing what he had created. That night, the city outside Matt Donovan's window looked like a galaxy made of glass and gilt. He hadn't gone home. The conversation with Emma kept looping in his mind, every word heavier than the one before. Replaceable. He could still hear it, echoing over the hum of his office lights. He loosened his tie, sat at his desk, and opened his laptop. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes. Emma Evans. Her file appeared instantly. Buried among thousands of employees, he barely remembered approving. He clicked through each entry, and the numbers began to tell a story far more brutal than any confession. 12 separate overtime requests marked as non-billable, 5 official warnings for attitude, 0 bonuses. He leaned back, eyes closed. She had given years to a system that drained her and then blamed her for breaking Sade blind. His hand trembled slightly as he opened another file. Michael Turner. The contrast was like a slap. 4 performance bonuses in the same period, 2 promotions, and a note from HR consistently exceeds leadership expectations. He scrolled down to the attached project summary and saw Emma's title listed under him as support staff. The anger came quietly, not as shouting, but as pressure building in his chest. He stood and walked to the window. Below him, the streets of Boston gleamed under melting snow. Somewhere down there, Emma and Lucy were probably asleep in a small apartment, unaware that their story had cracked something inside him. He wondered how many more like her existed within these walls, faces behind reports, people who had burned themselves out so that someone like Turner could shine brighter. Matt sat again and reopened the files. For the first time in years, he didn't see data. He saw hours missed with children, skipped meals, cancelled doctor appointments, silent tears behind cubicle walls. He saw himself reflected in every unchecked box, not as a leader, but as the architect of the very system that built those numbers. He pulled up the quarterly evaluation database, something he hadn't personally looked at since the company expanded. The pattern was undeniable. The people who spoke up were marked as difficult. The ones who stayed quiet got promoted. Productivity had been measured not by quality or ethics, but by silence. The clock on his wall hit 2 a.m., but he couldn't move. Sleep was impossible. His reflection in the glass looked older, heavier. He thought about Lucy, her small voice asking, "Why did you come?" and his answer, "Because no one else did." That truth was turning against him now, because no one else did. Not in his company, not in his boardroom, not under his leadership. He picked up his phone and called Human Resources. The voice on the other end was groggy. "Mr. Donovan, is everything all right?" He stared at the screen, glowing against his hand. "Reopen the Q4 evaluations," he said. "I want a full review, line by line." The HR director hesitated. "Sir, that's not protocol. If we start digging, it'll raise flags. Investors could panic. It could trigger audits." Matt's voice didn't rise, but it hardened. "Do it anyway." Silence followed. Then a nervous answer came. "With all due respect, Sire, this could turn into a scandal." He looked at Emma's file again, her long list of unpaid hours. her medical leave still pending approval, and something inside him finally broke through the fear. Then let it burn. The words hung in the air long after the call ended. Matt leaned back in his chair, exhaling for what felt like the first time in years. He wasn't sure if he was saving his company or destroying it. But for the first time, the decision felt clean. No strategy, no spin, just truth. The kind that hurt and healed at the same time. He shut the laptop but didn't turn off the lights. He sat there, staring at the city until the sky began to pale with the first trace of morning. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even sure he was good. But somewhere between Emma's exhaustion and Lucy's faith, he had remembered what kind of man he used to want to be. When the cleaning staff arrived at dawn, they found the CEO still sitting in his office, coat folded on the chair beside him, eyes fixed on the horizon. And though the world outside kept moving, for once, Matt Donovan didn't. He was finally still, finally awake. Morning came grey and heavy, like a sky that had forgotten how to breathe. Matt Donovan stood before the mirrored wall of the Donovan Group's boardroom. Tea knotted perfectly, eyes cold. Last night, he had opened every file that proved the system was rotten. Today, he would confront the men who had built it with him. Around the long table, the senior executives murmured softly, unaware of the storm about to break. Michael Turner sat 2 seats down, a confident smile on his face, already rehearsing his next pitch. Matt's voice cut through the air, calm but sharp. These are the quarterly evaluations you all approved. He placed a folder on the table. Emma Evans. 12 unpaid overtime entries. 5 disciplinary notes. No bonuses. He flipped to another page. Michael Turner. 4 bonuses. 2 promotions. 1 project listed as his one he didn't create. The room fell silent. Turner tried to laugh. The kind of laugh meant to diffuse tension. With respect. See you. That's just standard leadership credit. My job was to manage the process. Matt's gaze didn't move. Lead you drained her. You took her work, her time, her health, and called it management. His voice didn't rise, but the silence after it felt electric. The head of HR shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Donovan, if we reopen this case, it could attract legal attention. We should handle it quietly. Matt turned to her slowly. Quiet is what got us here. Every unpaid hour, every resignation we called a performance issue. That's what silence built. The CFO cleared his throat. With all due respect, Matt, these issues are isolated. We can't jeopardize the company's image over one employee. Matt's jaw tightened. It's not one employee. It's every person who gave this company their life, while we rewarded the people who took it from them. He tossed the folder across the table. Unpaid labor, false credit, medical claims denied. You want to call that efficiency, go ahead. But don't call it leadership. Turner leaned forward, desperate to reclaim control. Sir, you're letting one emotional incident cloud your judgment. This isn't personal. It's business. Matt's eyes flickered. And for the first time, there was heat behind them. You're right, Michael. It wasn't personal. Until I saw Emma Evans collapse in the snow because she couldn't afford to stop working. Until her 8-year-old daughter called a stranger for help because our system made her mother invisible. The words hit harder than any shout could. The room froze. Turner's confidence faltered, his mouth opening, but no sound coming out. Matt took a slow breath. You don't lead people by draining them dry. You lead by remembering they're human. He turned to the board. Effective immediately. Michael Turner is suspended, pending investigation. All bonuses under his name are frozen. HR will recalculate unpaid hours and compensate every employee affected. Emma Evans's medical coverage is to be restored in full. No one argued. No one even moved. The hum of the air vent was the only sound. Matt gathered his papers, straightened his jacket, and looked around the table one last time. I built a company that valued results over people. That ends today. He walked out without looking back. The mirrored wall reflected his silhouette, smaller now, but clearer. In the reflection, he saw not a CEO, but a man finally standing where he should have all along. When the elevator doors closed behind him, the boardroom remained frozen in silence. The storm had passed, but nothing would ever look the same again. The meeting was over, but the silence stayed with Matt long after he left the boardroom. He had done what was right, but it didn't feel like victory. Justice wasn't triumph. It was weight, the kind that settled deep in your chest and didn't let you sleep. Later that afternoon, he drove to the small apartment in East Boston. The red door looked different now, less a mark of desperation, more a reminder of where everything began. Emma opened the door slowly, still in her work clothes. She looked stronger than before, but there was a distance in her eyes. Matt held out a sealed envelope. It's official. Your promotion, full compensation for unpaid hours, and your medical coverage restored. He paused. And a new role? If you'll take it. She stared at the envelope for a long moment before stepping aside to let him in. Lucy was at the table, drawing with colored pencils, humming softly to herself. Emma finally spoke. I don't want it. Matt blinked. You earned it. She shook her head. I lost more than a title could replace. Time with my daughter. Peace of mind. Health. I can't buy back. I don't want to climb higher into the same system that almost broke me. Her voice was calm, not bitter. It carried the quiet conviction of someone who had finally stopped fighting to prove her worth. Matt set the envelope on the counter. He had expected gratitude, maybe relief. Not this. He searched for the right words, but nothing fit. She glanced at him and said softly, You're trying to fix something that can't be fixed with signatures. What people need isn't reward. It's recognition and the space to breathe. He felt the sting of truth in every word. Lucy looked up from her drawing and ran over, holding out a wrinkled piece of paper. It showed 3 figures, a woman, a little girl, and a tall man with a black car behind him. The stick figure version of Matt had a small gold star over his head. Lucy grinned. That's you. You saved us. Emma smiled faintly, shaking her head. Lucy. Sweetie, not everyone who helps is a hero. The little girl frowned. But he came. Matt crouched down, taking the drawing carefully. His throat tightened. He looked at Emma. Your daughter sees more clearly than most adults I know, she replied quietly. Children see what adults forget to look for. The apartment was warm now, the kind of warmth that came from truth, not comfort. Matt placed the drawing back on the table. I thought fixing this would make me feel better, he admitted. It doesn't. She smiled, sadly. That's because you didn't fix it. You felt it, and that's harder. For a moment, they just stood there. 2 people on opposite sides of the same wound, both changed by it in different ways. Matt looked at her, seeing not the employee, not the victim, but the kind of strength he had spent his life overlooking. Lucy tugged on his sleeve. Are you coming back? He managed a small smile. Maybe. If your mom lets me. Emma's eyes softened, the distance fading just a little. Her voice was quiet. She will. He nodded once, almost to himself. I'm not a hero, Lucy. I'm just someone late to do the right thing. Winter in Boston finally began to loosen its grip. The snow melted into thin streams along the sidewalks, and the air smelled faintly of rain instead of frost. Weeks had passed since that conversation in Emma's apartment, yet it stayed with Matt Donovan like a quiet echo. The company had moved on. The board had approved new ethics protocols, and his name was still on the headlines, but none of it mattered anymore. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a man running a company. He felt like someone learning how to live. He found himself driving toward the red door again on a late Thursday evening. No chauffeur. No security. No suit. Just a paper bag of groceries and the faint nervousness of a man showing up without a reason other than wanting to be there. When Emma opened the door, she didn't look surprised. She just smiled, the kind that said she expected him eventually. You're late, she teased. He exhaled a small laugh. Traffic's worse when you're not the boss anymore. The apartment was warm, alive with the smell of soup and herbs. Lucy sat at the table with crayons scattered everywhere, humming while she drew. She looked up when she saw him. You came, she said simply. I told you I would, he replied. Emma moved around the kitchen, barefoot, her hair pulled back loosely. She looked peaceful, something Matt hadn't seen before. He watched her ladle broth into a pot, the steam curling around her face. You didn't you? She asked without turning. He nodded. I stepped down last week. She looked at him, eyes curious but calm. Does it feel like losing everything? He smiled softly. Feels like breathing for the first time. They sat together at the table, the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. Lucy showed him her newest drawing, a house this time, with 3 windows and a sun too big for the paper. That's us, she said. Mum. Me. And you? Emma glanced at the picture, a quiet flush rising in her cheeks. Matt smiled, unsure what to say. So he didn't. After dinner, Lucy went to her room, leaving the door slightly open. The apartment grew quieter, except for the soft bubbling of soup still on the stove. Emma leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. So, what now? Mr. Donovan, without a title. He shrugged. Maybe start something small, something that doesn't need to look good in annual reports. Maybe rebuild from people instead of profit. She studied him for a long moment, then said, You always talk like a man fixing a machine. Maybe just live for a bit. His laugh was quiet. I don't think I know how. She tilted her head. Then learn. That's what we all had to do. He nodded, feeling the truth settle deep. He looked around the room, the chipped table, the worn rug, the warmth that had nothing to do with money. For years, he had measured success in square footage and numbers. Now, in this tiny apartment, success looked like 2 people sharing dinner without fear. Emma turned back to the stove, stirring gently. Without looking at him, she said, You know, Lucy's been waiting for you to visit again. She said you'd probably forget. He smiled faintly. She doesn't know I'm not great at forgetting things anymore. Emma laughed quietly. Then maybe that's a good start. He took a step closer, drawn not by romance, but by something quieter. Steadier, understanding. She handed him a wooden spoon. Then stir that, she said. Don't let it burn. He took it. The weight of it, grounding, real. For a moment, the air between them felt different, not charged, but full. He stirred slowly, watching the broth circle in soft golden ripples. Something inside him unclenched. The constant noise of ambition finally replaced by the steady rhythm of an ordinary moment. He realized belonging wasn't something you could own or earn. It was something you were invited into. When Emma turned off the stove, she looked at him with a gentle smile. "Stay for dinner," she said. He nodded. No hesitation. As he sat back down at the table, Lucy's laughter drifted from the other room, mingling with the faint clink of dishes. The city outside kept moving, but inside that small apartment, time seemed to slow just enough for a man who had once built an empire to finally find what he had been missing all along. Not victory, not redemption, just a place to belong. From the cold night when Emma collapsed alone on the snowy street to the quiet warmth of that small apartment, everything had come full circle. What began as exhaustion and injustice ended in understanding and grace. Matt had once measured worth in numbers and power, but through Emma and Lucy, he learned that real success is simply showing up when no one else does. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to finally see what matters. In the end, it wasn't about saving anyone. It was about remembering how to care. Because sometimes, the wrong call brings the right people together. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts below and tell us what moment stayed with you most. Subscribe, like, and share Emotional Echoes so more stories of love and healing can find their way to those who need them. Thanks for listening.